focus. Let's go straight to the phones with Carrie in Boone, North Carolina. Welcome to the Line of Fire.
Dr. Brown, thanks so much for taking my call. Like many Americans last night, watched the debate and then subsequently read John Piper's article after the debate, and obviously had a ton of thoughts on it. First of all, I want to say I'm very grateful for Desiring God and John Piper, their influence on my own life and their influence on my ministry. But like many, I was personally disappointed on the content of the article. I had a lot of thoughts. I wanted to share just a few with you. First of all, emailed your show this morning asking for your response and got a gracious response from your team. Really appreciated that, and I've seen that you have indeed addressed it, and that article will be coming out later tonight. But the big thing for me is, and you may agree or disagree with me on this, but I don't know of a more pro-life president than who we have in Donald Trump right now. And I do believe that John Piper is passionately pro-life. I think he failed to address that in the article. And then another thought was, imagine being Andrew Brunson reading that article. And I appreciated what you said in your article recently about, why many evangelicals are supporting it. So I just really wanted to gather, could you give us just a brief preview of what your article is going to look like in your thoughts?
So for those who haven't read the article, Pastor Piper basically said that from his viewpoint, barring something unforeseen in the next few days, he's not going to be voting for either presidential candidate and wants everyone to come to their own conclusions. But what he's saying is that you have the sins of Donald Trump being so egregious, divisiveness, boastfulness, sexual immorality, factiousness, that they are so deadly in this world and the world to come, that to think that we can support him in the name of pro-life is a big mistake. And that we don't realize that the damage he's doing is going to undo the good of having better justices in the courts and things like that. So in my article, I first give my points of affirmation. So first I say I wholeheartedly agree with Pastor Piper that the foremost calling of a minister of the gospel is, quote, to lead people to see Jesus Christ, trust his forgiveness for sins, treasure him above everything else in this world, live in a way that shows his all-satisfying value, and help them to make it to heaven with love and holiness. And then second, I deeply share his concern that many pastors have failed to raise up really radical Christians who are willing to die for Jesus. Third, I agree with him that our obsession with the elections and the well-being of America undermines the reality that we're citizens of a higher kingdom and we're just passing through this world. Fourth, I concur with him that the character flaws of the president have been very damaging. Piper wrote, when a leader models self-absorbed, self-exalting boastfulness, he models the most deadly behavior in the world. He points his nation to destruction of more kinds than we can imagine. Fifth, I have no problem with a Christian saying that they can't vote. I have a massive problem with saying I'm pro-life, pro-Bible, and I'm voting for Biden. But I do respect if someone comes to his conclusion. I differ with it because ultimately you're saying I'm going to leave the results of the election to others entirely, and I'm going to choose to have no influence either way. I respect the humility with which he posted things, and I agree with him that whatever path we take, it must enhance, not detract from our witness for Jesus. So those were 7 points of agreement. As I mentioned, if you've read Evangelicals at the Crossroads, my recent book on the subject, you'll know I've made many similar points. He says, I remain baffled that so many Christians consider the sins of an unrepentant sexual unrepentant sexual immorality, unrepentant boastfulness, unrepentant vulgarity, unrepentant factiousness, and the like to be only toxic for our nation, while policies that endorse baby killing, sex switching, freedom limiting, and socialistic overreach are viewed as deadly. So here's where I fundamentally differ. Number one, you have the character of the president itself, which we can say we don't follow, we don't model, we don't exalt, we don't defend, versus policies that will affect everyday life, versus policies that will enshrine the killing of the unborn, versus policies that will take away our religious freedoms, versus policies that will allow tyrannical regimes in other nations to run rampant. That's a big difference there. And then, so it's one thing to say, I'm voting for someone who's boastful and divisive, but I'm not empowering a party that's going to bring about policies that are going to be destructive to our nation in many ways and for generations.
Right.
And again, Trump is one man, as I point out. And as I wrote, and as destructive as his words and conduct can be, just look at the warnings in Proverbs about foolish kings, we can vote for him by the millions while at the same time modeling godlier conduct. In other words, we can say, okay, that's how he acts, but that's not how we act. We're not as apologists. We're not as defenders. We voted for him for XYZ reasons, but we don't defend this or that. And we're modeling something very different versus here's a party that is now going to put certain things into practice that are downright evil. So, as I wrote, if voting for a boastful man can potentially save millions of babies' lives, can that vote be justified? If voting for a man with a sexually immoral past can give support to persecuted minorities in China, can that vote be justified? If voting for a man who often lies and exaggerates can stop the rise of an anti-God socialism, can that vote be justified? So, as again, I've been shouting for years, we can't be his apologists. That's the big issue. One of my colleagues...
Yeah, and I don't think I was not expecting an endorsement at all. I just think there's a different way to look at this.
Yes.
And everything that you said about platform and policy, it felt off when I read it, and I just felt like it missed the issues that evangelicals like myself, young pastor like myself, man, life, that's a one issue vote. That's one issue for me. And
right. And again, when from God's perspective, yes, he'll deal with pride in an individual, but we don't have to follow that individual. But if we're voting for or not voting against sanctioning the slaughter of the unborn, that's a more serious thing. Now, one of my colleagues, evangelical friend, wrote to me last week, and he said, the gospel witness has been destroyed, especially among the younger generations. The final straw was the support of Donald Trump by these groups. The non-believing world is appalled by the hypocrisy. The only folks who don't see it are most of the evangelical world. My issue with that is, yeah, there's been hypocrisy when we preach Trump rather than Jesus, when we exalt him and defend him, as opposed to saying, well, we voted for him, but we preach Jesus and live Jesus. But let's be frank, a lot of the younger generation turned against us because we rejected homosexual activism. We reject the pro-choice position. So that rejection has been there anyway. And I close out the article saying, I wonder if future generations would understand if we explained the loss of our freedoms and the slaughter of millions of more babies by saying, yes, one party espoused these terrible policies, but we couldn't vote for the man whose party opposed them because he was too boastful and divisive. So as far as our own lives, let's be idealistic and strive in every way to be like Jesus. And when it comes to our voting, let's be pragmatic. That's what it comes down to.
And the issue is not supporting Trump. The issue is we're standing on biblical convictions and we're not moving.
Right.
You know? That's the issue, really, with the unbelieving issue. So, Dr. Brown, I so appreciate your time. Thanks so much for what you're doing.
You bet. So, Carrie, go to stream.org, get the article, share it with your flock, and let people pray and vote accordingly. 866-34-TRUTH. Oh, also, in terms of, say, talking about unrepentant sexual immorality, as far as I know, Trump has not continued to practice sexual immorality, not been caught in any scandal since he's running beginning in 2015. I don't believe he's modeling sexual immorality now, and he has expressed regret for some of the past things that he did. And there's the good character, as much as I grieve over the bad character, there's the good character of keeping his promises and his word and standing for important principles.